All right, so we are looking at Mark 2, 1 through 12. Jesus forgives and heals a paralyzed man. Um, so I know you've already read through it. What's your kind of initial thoughts kind of reading through it?
Well, we've read this story before in the past, and every time you read it, you get something a little different.
Oh, yeah.
What stuck out to me this time um, a lot was the simplicity of belief. And that's, to me, all of what this story means. A lot of people are like, hey, it's a lot about healing and forgiveness of your sins. I think for me, and this time I read it, just this time I got something out of it, was the simplicity of like, hey, if you believe, this is what happens. This is what happens.
Yeah,
That's it. Very simple. We always use lowest common denominator.
absolutely. Yeah.
That's to me, that's
Yeah, we add a lot of things to it that we don't know or understand. I want to give a quick kind of look at from an overview. So Jesus forgives and heals the paralyzed man. He shows up to a house, right? And it feels so much that this group that we're specifically talking about can't even get into the home and hear him or touch him or see him, probably because they said even the front door was so full you couldn't even get to it. This is in the second chapter of Mark. You would think at the second chapter of Mark, is his ministry really gone that far, that deep? And what's hard about when you read the a lot of the gospels, they're not always written chronologically. This could have happened, in the middle of his ministry, maybe the second year. It's probably in the beginning of it from the context that I'm reading it. And even in Mark 1, they don't start with a lot of background. It kind of goes right into it. So they're already healing and doing things, and he's already committing miracles in the first chapter. So, he kind of jumps right into the meat of what Jesus' ministry is. So they show up, four guys. There's a lot of implications. Are they related to this guy? Why in the world would they carry this guy up to the roof just to drop him down in there? And what was the purpose? Was it to hear Jesus, or did they believe that Jesus was true and they want to hear the message, or did they believe that Jesus could heal the paralyzed man? Okay, so that's a lot of inference. I think when I remember reading this the first time, or in years, over and over, because we've read this probably a number of times, I think there's this inference that they came to have him heal him, but it doesn't say that. It doesn't give you any context in there that says that they're bringing this paralyzed man to heal him. You would think that's implied, but it
yeah,
doesn't. But it doesn't say that.
yeah. It could, to me, I always kind of read it as like it was like kind of testing him, like they're bringing him, like, hey, here, heal this guy. We've
Yeah,
heard what you did in chapter one.
yeah.
Now we've all come. We've filled this place up. We want to see you heal this guy.
So they drop him in there, and he doesn't heal him. That's not the
Mm-mm.
first thing he does. What is it? What does he do? What's he say?
So he forgives him for his sins.
I just love that.
Yeah.
But what forgave his sins? Was it because he was there and he showed up, he was present? His language was when Jesus saw their faith, not the paralyzed man's faith. So it's kind of like looking at it as a body, right? We have other members of our group that we work together and we can achieve greater things. So it was their faith, not just his faith. And it wasn't you're healed, it was you're forgiven. And I'm sure the teachers of the law love that.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the fun question. I love this because one of the things they call Christianity into question is whether Jesus ever claimed to be God directly. So we look at verse 6, and now the teachers of the law were sitting there thinking to themselves, why does this fellow talk like that? He's blaspheming. Who can forgive sins but God alone? So Jesus didn't claim to be God there, but they're implying that that's the position he's taking.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I always think that's kind of fascinating that he never claims it directly, but he allows inference and he allows it to happen. He
Mm-hmm.
doesn't stop him. And Jesus is about truth. He never told him not to say that. He didn't question them saying that. But he always goes right back to the heart, right? He knew what was on their heart and what their concerns were. And I love his question back, right? He talks about, why are you thinking these things? That's one thing. Like he could read their expressions or knew their hearts. They were even thinking that. And he says, which is which is easier to do? Your sins, to say your sins are forgiven, or to say take up your mat and walk? I think that's pretty clever.
Mm-hmm.
I just love that. What else? Anything else you draw from it?
Just reading it, and I know you want to keep these things short, but just reading this, like, he says he sees their faith, right? That's another part for me is like, is he talking about the people that brought him or the people that were just around him, right? The Like I said, that right there, he's talking about another realm that people don't know. Like at this time, I feel like they didn't understand. Like, hey, that's why he's saying, what's easier to see? What's easier to see? Somebody healed or forgive sins, right? Like, what's easier? That's the question,
Yeah.
right? They don't realize he's talking on a whole nother realm of about their hearts, right? Um, it's the belief in, hey, what if you believe this, you can believe this. What do you need to see? And when you believe, then you start getting evidence of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where you believe here, and then you're healed. That's your evidence.
That's right.
So that's the only other thing I took from it: the simplicity, the evidence, the belief.
Yeah. The last thing
Good story.
I would want to emphasize is that, from their standpoint, think about in our position, we have some affliction we're dealing with. We want that affliction addressed. Like, that's very important. Be critical, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
It could be cancer. It could be, just whatever the distress is. And Jesus didn't come in and say, I'll take that away. No, he healed their sins. He forgave sins. Like, in the long standing, that would be more important than dealing with your affliction today.
That's right.
But that's not how we look at it.
Correct.
We want the affliction gone. And he immediately doesn't even address that. He addresses
the heart.
Yeah. So that was the last thing I kind of thought about when reading this.
Verse 12. Verse 12 ends with the man jumped up, grabbed his mat, and walked out through stunned onlookers. Right. We've never seen anything like this before. What people are saying.
Yeah.
It's signs as well. It's really cool, as sometimes you can be a bystander and you can also see signs and wonders of miracles.
Yeah.
So I've been fortunate. I know we don't have time right now, but I've been fortunate the last few weeks to hear some really cool miracles just like this. I heard one like this yesterday of miraculously believing, having faith in God, and being miraculously cured from cancer.
So I love it.
It's awesome. So it's really cool that you brought this up this morning, because I had a story like this told me.
Well,
yesterday.
I didn't bring it up. God did, but I appreciate that. All right, that's all I got.
Cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, that guy Chris. I told you he was real nice.